Veterans Voices is sponsored by Law Tigers Motorcycle Lawyers.
Well, welcome to Veterans Voices, honoring those who serve. In this next half hour, we're going to highlight a few stories to honor our nation's cherished veterans and all of those who serve in the military. Thanks for being with us. I'm Daniel Marin.
And I'm Natasha Paloma. Two families now have the peace of knowing what happened to their heroes. Both died more than 70 years ago. Darius Johnson shows us the modern-day mission that recently reunited these families with their fallen soldiers.
It's just amazing. Emotions are running very high right now.
Almost a lifetime of waiting for an Indiana family. Now they're getting to welcome their honorable fallen Marine home.
We're very fortunate that this happened, to be able to bring him back home and positively identify him as our family.
Marine Corps Private First Class Louis Weezyhan died 77 years ago during World War II.
And he fought in Terra One, he passed away. They never got his body back.
The Richmond, Indiana native lost his life on the second day of battle, November 21st, 1943. In 2014, an organization dedicated to recovering American service members located a cemetery with the remains of 27 people killed in Tarawa. Louis was one of them.
I remember driving in my truck and I told my fiance, I'm like, hey, they found Louis. It's the last thing I expected to hear.
Officials used DNA from his great niece, Kimberly Gardner, to positively identify him. Kimberly had never met him. So she made sure she was on the tarmac with 3 generations of her family waiting to honor her uncle's sacrifice.
When you see that coming off of the airplane, it just takes your breath away. You know, to know that that's your loved one that's been missing for 77 years.
It's a similar story for Suzanne Amvet, the niece of Marine Corps Private First Class Charles Miller of Albany, Indiana. Miller died on the 3rd day of battle.
We talked about him a little bit, you know, my mother and my grandmother.
Suzanne was told her uncle's remains could not be recovered. Then just before Memorial Day, she got the news.
It was pretty amazing. They took the DNA from his femur and it was I think like a 99% match. It's a miracle.
Amvet was born 2 years after Miller's death. Though she never knew her uncle, the artifacts now in her possession provide a glimpse of the few days he spent on the battlefield.
I think what really hit me was when I received the necklace and the coins and items from his body. How brave they were and how brave all the soldiers are that put their lives out for us in America. It's just amazing.
An emotional thanks not only to the soldiers and Marines who died, but to the organizations that worked to bring together generations of family torn apart by war. In Indianapolis, I'm Darius Johnson.
And Weezyhan was supposed to be buried in April, but that was delayed until September due to the pandemic. And on October 23rd, Private First Class Charles Miller received full honors when he was buried at Arlington National Cemetery.
It would be hard enough writing one biography. Imagine trying to write 400,000 of them. A history buff from Utah is on a mission to do just that. Don Milne started a nonprofit called Stories Behind the Stars. He spent the last 3 years researching and writing about the fallen heroes of World War II. His goal is to compile short histories of each of the 400,000 plus American service members killed in that war. Then he wants to create a searchable database, even a smartphone app, so users could visit a military cemetery, scan a name on a headstone, and be taken straight to the webpage that tells the soldier's story. But he needs help from volunteers.
It only takes an hour or two to write a story. We give you free access to research sites like Ancestry, newspapers, Fold3, and if you can write an obituary, you can do one of these stories.
Already, people from all over the country and all over the world have offered to take part, but he's hoping to enlist hundreds more. To help out, just visit his website at storiesbehindthestars.org.
Well, improving the lives of service members overseas while giving their families peace of mind at home. That's the current mission of one former sailor from Norfolk, Virginia. Katie Collette has the story of the woman who says her time in the Navy opened her eyes and changed her life forever.
Before the military, I only knew my own perspective. I only knew my own experiences of being an American, of being a college student, of being someone who was from the Midwest. And after joining the military, I was able to see so many other cultures and see how so many other people around the world live.
Chelsea Mandello comes from a military family. Her mother served in the Air Force, where both of her brothers currently serve.
I always wanted to have those sea stories of my own.
So when Chelsea graduated from Ball State University with a degree in journalism, she decided the Navy was best for her because of its journalism program.
My job was to travel the world and to tell the story from the perspective of the military.
She went on missions with the Army and Marines. One mission Chelsea will never forget took her to an orphanage in Malaysia.
These were children who had been from villages that had gone through very difficult times. So some of these children were missing limbs. Some of them had been badly scarred from burns. But when these service members exited the bus, all of these children, all they cared about was just playing and was just showing these service members their pets and was just having fun, and they wanted them to sit down and color with them.
Chelsea experienced the wonderment of children to battling the crime of piracy in the Mediterranean. She was at sea during sequestration, a time of slashed military budgets.
During this time, a lot of deployments were extended from 6 months to 12 months, and that alone decreased morale immensely.
While at sea in 2013, Chelsea and her crew members learned a shipment was on the way, a big morale booster. You see, they hadn't received mail from home in 3 months. When her package arrived,
I rushed it up to my office, I tore it open, but I was disappointed because everything in it had gone bad. Things had broken, things had melted.
Chelsea realized she wasn't the only service member this happened to. She also learned no service existed that could guarantee care packages be delivered in good condition to our service members around the world. For this second-class petty officer, that was not okay.
So after mustering my courage, I finally launched TROOPSTER Thanksgiving Day in 2015.
Chelsea calls it the Amazon of the military.
So we have an online service where friends and families can go on, they can pick different items. If their son or daughter really loves a certain type of magazine and they don't see it on the site, they can reach out to us, request that magazine, and we will go out in the middle of the night and find that just so that it can be part of that care package. I love my job, and I loved the experience of getting to serve my country. And now the way I see it, I'm still serving my country, but in a new way.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Katie Collette.
Well, El Paso is familiar territory for active military and veterans. Many who were stationed here often decide to remain after their military careers conclude. There are several local organizations that help service members transition into the civilian world. Emergence Health, the El Paso County Veterans Assistance Office, El Paso Military Peer Network, and Catch 22 Peer Support all offer guidance and assistance as they enter civilian life. Some of the challenges these soldiers face is the unknown from finding a job, being able to care for their families, and even asking for help.
When you're in the military, you have stability, you know you're getting an income. So that's one of the fears they face.
They face other changes. Going from a structured and planned out active lifestyle to a more relaxed one is also stressful. Some veterans find themselves homeless due to either substance abuse in order to deal with what they have experienced while in the service. Many will not seek help, but that is changing. Catch 22 Peer Support is part of a state collaboration made up of several organizations that work with veterans to find them referrals and assistance.
Well, coming up, a retreat and a getaway, not from battle, but from the struggles our willing warriors face daily. A new program shows us how.
Then writing the last chapter of an unsung hero's life. A veteran pays tribute after the discovery of a little book.
This is a paid advertisement by Amel and Kirkendall Dwyer LLP for legal services.
Every rider has a story. For some, it takes an unexpected turn, but you don't have to face it alone. We know where you're coming from because it's the road we share. We're the Law Tigers, lawyers who know the ride. We're the first call riders make when they're injured, and there's a reason. We know every challenge that lies ahead. Our hands-on experience makes us who we are. If you're injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS, Texas Motorcycle Lawyers. Veterans Voices is sponsored by Law Tigers Motorcycle Lawyers.
Veterans with a retreat providing a getaway for veterans and their families and friends.
It's a break from the daily struggles veterans deal with, like physical injuries and emotional ones. Alexandra Limon tells us about the Veterans Retreat at Bull Run.
Pierre Larkin is a veteran who retired after 32 years of serving in the Marines, Air Force, and the Army.
I was angry, I was upset.
That's when Larkin found Willing Warriors. Shirley Dominic, a 22-year Air Force veteran, is the co-founder of Willing Warriors, the nonprofit that runs the Warrior Retreat at Bull Run.
And they can be cared for here like never before.
She says she was inspired to open the retreat for veterans after a challenge at church to help others.
Going to visit the wounded warriors at Walter Reed.
So that 40-day church challenge turned into what she calls a life-changing decision to purchase this 11,000 square foot estate with sweeping views of the Blue Ridge Mountains.
Lots of them have appointments day after day that they have to get to, and this is really taking them out of that environment.
The house is wheelchair accessible and equipped with a theater room, games, playgrounds, and a memorial garden. And they can have gourmet meals prepared for them and their guests at the home. Willing Warriors also partners with other nonprofits in the area, like the Mighty Oaks Foundation, that provides post-traumatic stress training to groups of veterans from around the country.
22 veterans a day commit suicide. 22.
In his thank you letter to Willing Warriors, Larkin wrote that every time the retreat doors open, you have reduced the 22-a-day loss by 1. In Washington, Alexandra Limon.
An accident during an airstrike in Afghanistan in 2009 wounded Monica Southall's body, but not her spirit. Southall has won 5 gold medals in the Warrior Games and Invictus Games, competing in sitting volleyball, discus, and shot put. And she credits sports for motivating her recovery from 27 surgeries.
Sometimes you need an outlet, or you need a reason to get up. And the games to me were a reason to get up every morning and train hard and just try and do my best, to compete, not only in life, but at the games as well.
And now Monica is painted forward as a coach to other wounded servicemen and servicewomen.
Coming up, a veteran says the worst thing is to be forgotten, why he wrote the last chapter in the story of an unsung hero.
Then they learn to comfort, protect, and give joy to those suffering in silence, a group dedicated to training service dogs.
This is a paid advertisement by Amel and Kirkendall Dwyer LLP for legal services.
The open road. To those who understand what it offers, it's a call that has to be answered. What lies ahead? Who knows? It's in our nature to explore the possibilities and embrace the unknown. We travel the same road, knowing the unexpected may occur. When you need us, we'll be there with the strength and experience that makes us who we are. The Law Tigers. If you're injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS, Texas Motorcycle Lawyers. Veterans Voices is sponsored by Law Tigers Motorcycle Lawyers.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. We are honoring our nation's heroes. There are more than 500,000 people who rely on the support of a service dog in the U.S.
In Charlottesville, there are dozens of dogs being trained on any single day at the Service Dogs of Virginia program. Constance Jones brings us this report.
Dottie, watch me. Okay, let's go. This is Dottie. She is 19 months old and she is a black lab. She's been paired with me.
After 7 years in the Army, Michelle went back to civilian life, but it wasn't easy.
For me, basically, it is climbing Mount Everest every time I leave my house.
Michelle was having trouble going out in public. Eventually, she was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder.
Simple task for a person without PTSD, I should say. Is something that I cannot do.
Like many veterans, she's gone through a list of treatments and therapies to no avail until she learned about Service Dogs of Virginia, located in Charlottesville.
My hope for having Dottie is that I am finally able to return to a normal life again.
Sally Day serves as the Director of Development at Service Dogs of Virginia.
I do everything I can to raise funds. We do not pass on that cost to our clients. When service dog organizations began, they all started with a waiting list because there was so much need. Essentially, we're trying to meet the need that's out there.
Since 2000, the organization has placed over 95 dogs with clients throughout Virginia.
Go in.
Michelle excited about her new relationship. In 2 weeks, they'll be out on their own.
And this is just a tool for me to carry around with me. This is going to be like having my best friend with me wherever I go.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Constance Jones.
This is a paid advertisement by Amel and Kirkendall Dwyer LLP for legal services.
The open road. To those who understand what it offers, it's a call that has to be answered. What lies ahead? Who knows? It's in our nature to explore the possibilities and embrace the unknown. We travel the same road, knowing the unexpected may occur. When you need us, we'll be there with the strength and experience that makes us who we are. The Law Tigers. If you're injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS, Texas Motorcycle Lawyers.
Veterans Voices is sponsored by Law Tigers Motorcycle Lawyers.
Every war hero has a story. Some just take a little longer to tell. 7 decades longer in the case of one World War II hero. The final chapter of his book was written only a few months ago. Jeremy Hubbard is in Colorado.
Army veteran Bill Lynn has a warehouse full of military mementos.
To us, this is very personal.
But this
is the artifact here just below my hand.
This might be his most prized possession. It once belonged to Eddie Sternot, who got the Catholic prayer book as a little boy. A few years later, he took it with him to World War II.
Where on the 13th of January 1945, he was killed in action in a place called Bois Jacques.
Sternot was buried here in this American cemetery in Belgium, but his book, it stayed on the battleground. 60-plus years later, fate brought it to Bill Lynn at a church service nearby in Belgium, honoring Battle of the Bulge heroes. A woman approached him.
And she explained that her father was a woodcutter in 1947. He was chopping wood in that forest. This book, as it turns out, had his name and address in Wisconsin inside.
So Bill did some research and found out just a week before Eddie died, he did something heroic. He and his men held off a German attack while taking tank fire. He no doubt saved American lives.
This is to certify that the President of the United States of America has awarded the Bronze Star Medal to Staff Sergeant Edmund J. Sternot, United States Army.
Last Veterans Day in California, 75 years after his death, Eddie Sternot finally got a Silver Star, a Bronze Star, and a Purple Heart.
It's wonderful.
And there to receive those medals was his little cousin Dolores, his only living relative.
And I'm glad he finally got his due justice.
All thanks to a veteran who helped write this little book's final chapter.
The worst thing is not to die in combat. The worst thing is to be forgotten.
For Veterans Voices, I'm Jeremy Hubbard.
And coming up, hundreds of Navajo volunteers use their language to relay messages. Now a museum will honor their sacrifice.
This is a paid advertisement by Amel and Kirkendall Dwyer LLP for legal services.
Every rider has a story. For some, it takes an unexpected turn, but you don't have to face it alone. We know where you're coming from because it's the road we share. We're the Law Tigers, lawyers who know the ride. We're the first call riders make when they're injured, and there's a reason. We know every challenge that lies ahead. Our hands-on experience makes us who we are. If you're injured in a motorcycle accident, call 1-800-LAW-TIGERS, Texas Motorcycle Lawyers.
Veterans Voices is sponsored by Law Tigers Motorcycle Lawyers.
Welcome back to Veterans Voices. Secret soldiers from the Navajo Nation in Arizona and New Mexico helped in a big way to win World War II.
From all across their homeland, hundreds of Native American men volunteered to become Navajo code talkers. Here is David Romero.
The greatest thing was sacrificing our lives for our country. It wasn't just a duty, it was a responsibility, and we knew that we had to defeat the enemy or they would defeat all of us, take what we had.
Roy Hawthorne and more than 400 fellow code talkers volunteered from both sides of the state border inside the Navajo Nation of New Mexico and Arizona. Now, the idea to use the Navajo language as a communications code in the Pacific Theater came from a military man who once lived on the reservation. He knew the Navajo language was incredibly complex and only known by a small group of people. Young Navajo men were recruited, and this was to create the code using common names in their language to describe the military terms like battleships, tanks, and reconnaissance planes.
It's quiet, doesn't carry any armament. That's a hummingbird. In Navajo, it was daki-tien.
In battles across the Pacific, code talkers would relay thousands of messages with no errors, and their code would never be broken by the Japanese. Hawthorne and the others had used their language as a successful weapon, a native language that was ironically often prohibited in reservation boarding schools at home.
The language was discouraged. The use of it was discouraged.
The role of the code talkers in the war was kept secret for decades. Only much later were they acknowledged and their story fully told. Hawthorne says despite the hardships his native people had endured on American reservations, when the war came, frustrations were set aside.
We were loyal to our country. It wasn't because it was called America, but it was called a people that were willing to do for other people. That's the way we treated one another.
Roy Hawthorne passed away in 2018. Very few of the original 400 code talkers are alive today, and there's a big push in New Mexico to create a museum to honor these heroes. Last year, the New Mexico legislature and the governor pledged more than $1 million to start construction of the museum. For Veterans Voices, I'm David Romero.
Well, we want to thank you for helping us share these courageous stories from our military heroes.
KTSM would like to thank all of those who serve. Have a great night.